Many parts of the country are covered by a thick layer of snow and have been experiencing freezing temperatures since yesterday, causing traffic accidents and flight cancellations on Friday. As a growing number of countries are blocking the use of the Chinese AI service DeepSeek, Beijing has spoken out for the first time. We take a look at what's at the core of data security issues. The iconic Seoul Fashion Week returns to Dongdaemun Design Plaza, featuring a number of innovative brands, one of which combines technology with sustainability. It's February 7th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We start with harsh weather conditions that have been affecting the nation since yesterday. Intense snowfall and freezing temperatures have caused much disruption on the roads and in the skies. Park Go-nu has the latest.
Heavy snow and a cold wave are continuing to affect South Korea. On Friday morning, snowfall even reached 3 to 8 centimeters per hour in many areas, leading to the accumulation of up to around 15 centimeters of snow in some regions of Jeolla-do province. Snow from the previous night combined with sub-zero temperatures dropping below minus 10 degrees Celsius led to multiple accidents on icy roads. A cargo truck driver in their 70s died in a crash after skidding and colliding with another truck on the Seoyan Expressway in Gangjin, Chungcheong-do province. A passenger in the truck sustained minor injuries. Another fatality occurred in Hongcheong-gun County, Gangwon-do province the night before, when a person also in their 70s was hit by a tow truck dispatched earlier to clear another accident. Due to harsh weather conditions, over 100 flights from Jeju to other domestic airports were canceled as of Friday at 3 p.m. Around 90 ferries were also canceled, while roads and mountain trails were closed. The Korea Meteorological Administration urged the public to remain careful about safety and personal health. It also forecast the cold wave to begin easing next week. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, an earthquake measuring slightly above 3 on the Richter scale struck the central part of Korea in the wee hours of this Friday. Kim Jong-sil has more.
Early Friday morning around 2:35 a.m., a magnitude 3.1 earthquake struck the central region of the country, waking people with the shake. The epicenter was located about 22 kilometers northwest of Chungju city at a depth of 9 kilometers. The quake was felt in surrounding areas of Chungju, including Gangwon-do and parts of Gyeonggi-do provinces. Initially, the Korea Meteorological Administration estimated the quake's magnitude at 4.2, but after further analysis, it was revised to 3.1. South Korea uses the modified Mercalli intensity scale to measure earthquake intensity, with 10 being the strongest. In this case, the highest tremor intensity reported in Chungju was level 5, or moderate intensity.
Level 5 means that nearly everyone in the area felt the shaking, with items like dishes and windows breaking and unstable objects tipping over. 2 aftershocks occurred by 8:30 a.m. with smaller magnitudes.
Experts also suggested further caution for those in the affected areas.
Although this earthquake is relatively small compared to those occurring in seismic hotspots, it may have caused strong shaking that could make some people feel uneasy. If you feel tremors, it is important to stay calm and prioritize protecting your head and body.
The Ministry of the Interior and Safety has confirmed that there were no significant injuries or damages, with over 20 reports of shaking as of Friday morning, the most coming from Gangwon-do with 15 reports. The ministry has activated the emergency response system and issued an earthquake warning for the affected areas. It has also dispatched a field situation manager to Chungju to oversee the situation and ensure proper management. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Chinese AI startup DeepSeek, that has rapidly gained global attention, is now under fire over data privacy and security concerns. Regulators here are calling for a detailed examination into its related policy. Moon Hae-ryun with the details.
As governments around the world move to restrict the use of DeepSeek, the Chinese AI startup and Beijing's foreign ministry have spoken up regarding data privacy concerns for the first time. On Friday, DeepSeek issued a statement warning against misinformation and fake accounts impersonating the company, saying that fake information related to the firm and its service are misleading the public and causing confusion. A spokesperson from China's foreign ministry stated during a press briefing that the Chinese government places great importance on data privacy and security, and that it has never and never will ask a firm or individual to collect or store data against laws. These statements come as South Korea's government ministries blocked government computers connected to external networks from accessing DeepSeek earlier this week, alongside restrictions and bans in Australia, Japan, Taiwan, and Italy. Seoul's data privacy watchdog, the Personal Information Protection Commission, also stated on Friday that it is conducting a detailed analysis of DeepSeek's privacy policy, and users should exercise caution when using the platform. The commission sent an official inquiry to DeepSeek's headquarters following controversies at the end of last month, but the firm has yet to respond. The inquiry focuses on three main aspects of data collection: who is responsible for handling personal data, what types of data are collected, their purpose, and how they are stored and used, and whether data is shared with third parties. DeepSeek has been accused of excessive data collection, such as keystroke patterns or rhythms, which some experts argue are unnecessary to its service.
Collecting keystroke patterns to identify individuals doesn't necessarily mean a better service, so that's why it seems a bit excessive.
There is also the issue of users being unable to opt out of data collection, unlike ChatGPT.
The right to collect personal data and data ownership belongs to the individual, but if that person isn't given a choice, the ability to opt in or opt out, that's a problem too.
And while there has been no confirmation that the data stored can be accessed by a third party, experts say that room for doubt when it comes to sensitive data such as those used by government ministries should be eliminated before use. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., the first summit between President Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba is set to take place on Friday, as Tokyo works to build a stronger alliance with the new leadership in Washington, while South Korea appears to be struggling to engage with the new American leader. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji has this report.
Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba is set to be the second foreign leader to hold a summit with Trump, following Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The two leaders will meet at the White House on Friday, where they will likely discuss ways to boost security and business ties. They're also scheduled to hold a joint news conference following their meeting. Japan's Asahi Shimbun said officials from the two governments are putting the final touches on a joint statement that will be released after the meeting that will proclaim a golden age for the two countries' relations. Last week, Trump, who was particularly close with the late Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, said he was looking forward to the meeting.
Well, he's coming in next week. I don't know, he asked for a meeting, and I have great respect for Japan. I like Japan. Prime Minister Abe was a very close friend of mine. What happened to him was so sad, one of the saddest days. But they're coming in to speak to me, and I look forward to it.
Trump held multiple summits with Abe during his first administration. And just like Abe, Ishiba is reportedly hoping to build a personal relationship with Trump to build a stronger alliance with the U.S. In fact, Japanese local media said he has been analyzing Abe's approach to handling Trump. He reportedly memorized an extensive amount of anticipated questions and answers on policies, prepared a diagram explaining the status of Japan's investments in the U.S., and even studied Trump's personality ahead of the upcoming summit. Meanwhile, as the Japanese leader rushes to meet Trump, South Korea is still struggling to engage with the Trump's team amid a leadership crisis. Acting President Choi Sang-mok is yet to hold a phone call with Trump, and Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol is yet to finalize his trip to the U.S., although he's seeking to meet with his new American counterpart, Marco Rubio, as early as possible. Left without a leader, the government is now tasked with handling the future of South Korea-U.S. alliance under Trump, who has already begun to reshape the international order in other parts of the world. 배은지, Arirang News.
In other news, international criticism seems to have done little to deter U.S. President Donald Trump's intentions to lay claim to Gaza. Lee Seung-jae covers his latest remarks.
During a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier this week, U.S. President Donald Trump proposed a U.S. takeover of Gaza and the relocation of 2 million Palestinians. The plan was heavily criticized by the international community, with some calling it a form of ethnic cleansing. However, the U.S. president revisited the proposal on Thursday. Taken to his social media platform, Truth Social, Trump said the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. Under his proposal, Trump continued to explain that the Palestinians would have already been resettled in far safer and more beautiful communities with new and modern homes in the region. He added that the U.S. would be part of efforts to redevelop the enclave. However, he did not mention whether the Gazans would be allowed to return to their homes. Under international law, attempts at forced transfer of populations from occupied territory are strictly prohibited. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Thursday explained that the proposal for Palestinians to leave Gaza would be for an interim period while reconstruction took place. Amid concerns that the U.S. may also send troops to Gaza, which would lead to further tensions in the Middle East, Trump said that his proposal would not require any U.S. soldiers. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Have you been there?
Up next, we share with you the fashion trends that will shape the fall and winter of this year as seen at the Seoul Fashion Week. Our Ian, he was there.
Want an exclusive first look at the hottest fall and winter fashion trends? Whether you're a trendsetter or just curious about what's next in the world of fashion, this week, Dongdaemun Design Plaza in Central Seoul is the place to be. The 2025 Fall-Winter Seoul Fashion Week kicked off on Wednesday, bringing together top designers, industry professionals, and fashion enthusiasts to showcase the boldest, most innovative styles of the season with the aim of elevating global interest in K-fashion. The opening show features Hannashin, a brand that says it constantly strives to balance glamour with sustainability. Technology is helping it do that.
One technology our brand has particularly embraced is 3D printing. The first dress you saw in the show, embellished with jewels, was created using the fused deposition modeling method. Another dress featuring stars was made using polyjet printing. By exploring how to integrate 3D printing into fashion, we've been able to create innovative and creative designs.
These 3D printing technologies allow vivid prints to be attached directly to textures in a sustainable manner, such as precise material usage and reducing waste. Designer Shin also hinted that one of this year's fashion trends highlights the use of new technologies to create cruelty-free alternatives to traditional fur, with many brands leading the way. Also, to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Seoul Fashion Week, the opening day featured the first ever Seoul Fashion Forum, bringing together global industry leaders. James Fallon, Chief Content Officer of Fairchild Media Group, a leading source of fashion news and analysis, shared insights on the global competitiveness of Korean designer brands. This year's Fall-Winter Seoul Fashion Week also hosts a trade show with over 130 fashion brands, offering a platform for interaction between brands and more than 300 domestic and international buyers, with the goal of securing contracts worth around 8 billion Korean won, or approximately over $6 million.
The event highlights the latest trends with innovative presentations that mix fashion and the work of people from all around the world. Don't miss this exciting look at the future of fashion before it ends on February 9th. Ian, Arirang News.
This year's Winter Asian Games opens tonight in the Chinese city of Harbin. The opening ceremony will take place at the Harbin International Convention Exhibition and Sports Center at 9 p.m. Korea Standard Time. The regional sporting event that takes place every 4 years marked its 9th edition this year and the first in 8 years since the last games in 2017, as the 2021 event was canceled due to the pandemic. South Korea will have 148 athletes competing in 6 sport categories. It's Friday, and you know what that means. It's time for our arts and culture segments. We have our culture correspondent, Song Yujin here. Welcome, Yujin.
Great to be here, Jungmin.
What do you have for us today?
Well, lately I've been thinking a lot about how not all important great work is given the spotlight. I want to take this newscast, for example. While you and we are in front of the camera, behind the camera, we have a team of incredibly talented people who work tirelessly to bring this Newscenter to our viewers every night. And I think that the same goes for art. While there are some people who dedicate their lives to creating it, there are also those who are behind the scenes, also working tirelessly to preserve and restore it. So for this week, I have a story about a group of skilled technicians who ensure that our cultural treasures stand the test of time. Take a look.
At a glance, these two paintings may seem identical. But look closer, and you'll start to spot differences. The one on the left has stains, areas where paint has peeled or faded, imperfections that are absent in the one on the right. This transformation is the work of future National Heritage Maintenance Technicians. National Heritage Maintenance Technicians are certified professionals responsible for preserving Korea's cultural treasures, from paintings to historic buildings, as close to their original state as possible. So every year, the Heritage Education Institute offers a training program to really nurture experts in the conservation, restoration, and repair of national heritage. And here at the Insa Art Center in Seoul, works by graduates of last year's program are on display. Since these students are not yet licensed, they have recreated existing pieces to showcase their craftsmanship. One such piece is this Joseon Dynasty-style checkerboard, crafted with a turtle shell top and a tiger design made from ox horn. And this is the original housed at the National Folk Museum of Korea.
I first crafted the wooden base, then applied hemp cloth, layered lacquer, and added decorative elements. What I loved most about this program was collaborating across different fields. This piece, for example, includes mineral pigments used in the Dantong traditional paintwork.
The exhibition features 101 student works. Students can choose from 15 courses in the program, including lacquering, woodworking, paintwork, and imitation.
We started with 40 students in 2012 and now have over 120 graduates each year. I can feel the growing public interest, which I think is due to more people recognizing the importance of cultural heritage.
The steady rise in technicians reflects this growing awareness, with over 13,000 now working in the field. Although they're called technicians, they are, in fact, artists in their own right.
Restoring heritage requires highly specialized skills, using the same techniques as in the past. In this sense, these experts play a central role in preserving and protecting our cultural heritage.
Though these technicians often work behind the spotlight, their hands keep history alive, preserving its timeless beauty. A craft rarely acknowledged, but absolutely essential.
I think preserving traditional crafts is key to protecting our national identity and history. That's why we need experts who safeguard not just the artistic value of artifacts, but also their cultural and historical significance. I really hope to be part of that work.
They're the guardians of Korea's national heritage, ensuring that its beauty endures for generations to come.
It's a truly rewarding profession. Eugene, you had the chance to meet these future technicians and see their work. Can you tell us a bit more about this exhibition?
All right, so as mentioned in my report, 101 works are currently on display, and they range from lacquering, woodwork, metal fittings, gold plating, imitation works, and traditional decorative paintings. So with so much to offer, you might wonder, where should I start if you have the chance to visit this exhibition? So the Korea Heritage Service recommends 4 pieces, which is the checkerboard featured in my report, a replica of the Changdeokgung Palace Sangryangjeong Pavilion ceiling, an imitation of a Buddhist painting from Daeungsa Temple in Jeolla-do Province, which is what you're seeing on the screen. And last but not least, a peony flower latticework door from Burugapsa Temple, which is a temple also located in Jeolla-do Province.
And you mentioned that these graduates don't have licenses yet. So what does it take to become a certified National Heritage maintenance technicians?
Well, to become a certified technician, as I kind of mentioned in my report, you of course have to pass the national certification exam, which takes place annually. And the sign-up period for this year's exam is coming up. It's between February 17th to February 21st. And the test offers 24 categories, each involving an interview and a practical test. And this test is scheduled for early April. So once you pass, you become a certified technician. And this means that you qualify to work directly at national heritage sites.
Best of luck to exam takers. All right, thank you, Eugene, for the report.
My pleasure.
In addition to the snow from yesterday, more snow has been falling in Chungcheong-do and Jeolla-do provinces today. Heavy snow advisories for Seoul have been lifted, but heavy snow warnings are still in place mainly in southern Gyeonggi-do province, the Chungcheong-do and Jeolla-do regions. Heavy snow of more than 15 centimeters is forecast in the Chungcheong-do provinces, up to 25 centimeters in the Jeolla-do provinces by tomorrow, and up to 30 centimeters of snow is expected in the mountainous areas of Jeju Island by Sunday. Morning temperatures will go down a bit tomorrow. Seoul will start off at minus 13 degrees Celsius, Chuncheon at minus 16. Daily highs will move up to minus 3 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 0 degrees in Gwangju and Gyeongju. The cold spell is expected to last until this weekend, and the temperatures will return back to normal levels on Monday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thanks for watching. A panel session up next.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors? Grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat, and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here. Add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
Our lives are swept into a vortex of this intricately connected world. Providing an in-depth exploration of global security, diplomacy, economy, and culture to offer a unique international perspective. Embark on a global news journey with the Geovista today.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues from across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. As President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial nears its conclusion, tensions continue to rise over key testimonies and legal battles. The sixth hearing, held on Thursday, brought intense debate over allegations that President Yoon had directly ordered military forces to remove lawmakers from the National Assembly on December 3rd, a claim that seems to be at the center of the impeachment case. With only 2 more hearings scheduled, the impeachment trial has entered its final stretch. However, uncertainty remain regarding the possibility of additional witness, potential delays, and broader political implications of the proceedings. So to break down the key developments, we invite Lee Hyun, Dean and Professor of Law at Handong International Law School. Welcome, Professor.
Thanks for having me on the program.
And also joining us is Cho Hee-kyung, professor of law at Hongik University. Great to have you with us again, Professor.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me.
So let's start with Professor Cho. So we are aware that 6 out of the 8 hearings designated by the Constitutional Court have now been completed, and President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial has now entered its latter phase. How do you assess the progress so far?
Well, I think the court has been conducting the case very efficiently and at the same time giving the defendant full opportunity to present his case, Yoon's team. So in a normal trial, there are 2 parts. Usually the complainant or the prosecution presents their case first, and then the defendant would present their case. But in this constitutional trial, it's been slightly mixed. So we've had witnesses from both sides giving testimonies in succession, and so the order is not so clear-cut. But I would say that we are at a point where in an ordinary criminal trial, the prosecution essentially has almost finished presenting its case, and it would be resting its case, and it will be the turn of the defendant to then present their case. But we've already heard from a number of witnesses that have been called by the defendant's side as well. And so the progress is certainly very efficient. And so if we keep going at this pace, I would expect a decision, if not by the end of this month, certainly by the beginning of next month.
Right, so the progress is being held as planned. Now, what about Professor Lee? The 6th hearing, which was held yesterday, was conducted from 10 a.m. and it lasted almost all day, unlike previous hearings. Now, this move is interpreted as an effort to expedite the impeachment proceedings, but some critics argue that the Constitutional Court is rushing only the president's case, raising concerns over a hasty review. What are your thoughts on this, Professor?
Right. So the Constitutional Court here is engaged in a kind of a balancing act. So on one side, you have the desire for a speedy trial, which, of course, the defendant would want to have. But ironically, in this case, I think the President Yoon wants to delay as much as possible. But on the other side as well, you need to have fairness and, due process. And so the idea here is, under the Constitutional Court Act, there's 180 days from the date of the filing of the adjudication, in this case, the filing of the impeachment petition. The court has 180 days to make a final decision on whether or not to remove the president. So here, as you mentioned, the scrutiny that's being given to the Constitutional Court is whether or not it's trying to speed this process too quickly. But I think, as Professor Zhou mentioned, the court has done this, I think, rather efficiently, moving this forward because it's such a high priority case, because the political balance of the country lies with the Constitutional Court as to whether or not we're going to have a new election or whether President Yoon will be reinstated. So, the issue here really comes to the question about speedy trial versus due process. And so, just to give you some context, basically in the 2 other impeachment cases against presidents, President Moon and President Park. In President Moon's case, the decision came after 63 days later, after the impeachment motion was filed with the court. And for, President Park, her impeachment basically took 91 days. So right now, as of today, it's been 55 days since the impeachment petition was filed with the court, and so as a result, we're sort of on pace to sort of either match or be a little longer in terms of the time it took to impeach at least the decisions to be made in both of those cases. And so, as I think we will see, the question about hearing more witnesses, whether the court will then go forward with the considerations of other issues involved in the case, but I think we're on track, to have a decision, certainly, as President Zhou mentioned, maybe by at the end of this month or at the beginning of March, but certainly before any time when 2 justices have to retire in April. And I think that's certainly a consideration for the court to get this done and wrapped up in a way that so there'll be no paralysis in the government with this impeachment.
Right, of course, there's a lot of things to consider in terms of time. Now, during the 6th hearing yesterday, key witnesses, including former Special Warfare Commander Kwak Jong-un, testified regarding the military deployment during the December 3rd emergency martial law. Professor, what aspects do you think the justices focused on as key points of contention?
Right. I mean, the focus here clearly is what exactly did President Yoon order when he dispatched troops to the National Assembly, right? Because that's the crux. I mean, that's really the gravamen of this petition, is whether he violated the Constitution, and specifically, did he give an order to drag out National Assembly members and to arrest them, which of course would be a blatant violation of the Constitution. And in this case, because the language that's being used, and this is the testimony, right, in terms of what the commander was ordered by the president to either drag out the members and arrest them. And in fact, that was the sort of the basis for which, the petition to impeach the president was, I think, essentially made. And so, the legal question here, of course, is while the president has certainly the authority to declare martial law, in terms of the application of it and how it's done has to be done in a constitutional manner. And so this testimony, of course, is going to be very, very sensitive. And so when Commander Kwak was, being questioned by the National Assembly members who are prosecuting the case, and by President Yoon's attorneys and President Yoon himself, there was, at least on President Yoon's side, he denies that he ever gave the order to the commander in this case to actually drag people out of the National Assembly building and to essentially arrest them. And so we have a clear difference, obviously, in terms of the factual sort of basis and the facts that have been established. And so at this point, because there's discrepancy between the two sides, the prosecution and the defense here are going to, of course, rely on the credibility of the witnesses, whether you believe President Yoon or you believe the commander in terms of receiving the order from President Yoon as to whether or not he was ordered to actually arrest National Assembly members. And so if that fact is established, I think the justices then will, have a very hard time. Well, not a hard time, but certainly have a relatively easy decision to go forward with the impeachment. But I think this is why the testimony here was so important as to what the president actually did and what his intentions were with respect to the martial law order. And so I think that's where I think that a lot of the attention has been resting on in terms of Commander Kwak's testimony and then President Yoon's response to his testimony.
Right. And for our viewers who are just joining in, this was, like our Professor Lee mentioned, this was one of the most contentious issues, whether President Yoon had ordered to drag out lawmakers from the National Assembly. And there's ongoing row about the subject of whom Yoon ordered to bring out, with Yoon saying it was agents, while, Special Warfare Command Commander Kwak Jong-un, he says he heard it to be a number of people. Now, all of these lawmakers, number of people, it's all quite similar. They have a similar pronunciation in the Korean language. Professor Cho, given this conflicting testimonies about the subject of whom to drag out, what kind of criteria will the Constitutional Court use to establish the facts?
Well, it will be the same rules of evidence as you would apply to any other evidence that the court would examine to see if it actually proves the fact that's being contested. But personally, I actually think this dispute regarding was it lawmaker, i.e. 의원, or agent, or 요원, or number of people in one, it really doesn't matter. It's really a storm in a teacup, as it were, because I would actually direct people who are interested to the exchange between Justice Kim Hyung-do and Commander Park Hyung-gun regarding this very point. So, as Professor Lee explained, the President Yoon's side is claiming that he ordered the commander to drag out agents, but commander says, I heard in one, so number of people, and who was actually within the assembly hall, which is the location that they were supposed to be dragging people out from. There were no agents at the time inside the hall, and agents would simply require just one word from the commander to, vacate the premise and they will follow. So why would you need to drag them out? Plus the fact that before the word agent or lawmakers, etc., was used, you have to look at the context of what was spoken. And it was clearly said, and this was not contested by the president's side, the quorum has not been reached yet. And so use whatever means necessary, break down doors if you have to, and drag whoever out, whether it be agents, etc. And so in that context, why would you think that agents would have a quorum inside the assembly hall? So the court would look at reliability, credibility, and authenticity of the evidence. And given that this is a testimony and not physical evidence, you also look at whether it's corroborated by other evidence. And Commander Kwak's evidence is being corroborated by his subordinate. And in fact, the exchange between him and the president was actually being heard over loudspeaker, which was still turned on. And so there is so much more corroborating evidence that supports the credibility of what Park is saying, as opposed to Yoon, who has proven to be a very unreliable witness throughout the whole trial.
Right, so the court will have to take into consideration the credibility of the testimonies as well as the actual situation on that day. Now, with only 2 more hearings remaining, President Yoon's legal team has requested that the Constitutional Court hold weekly hearings, emphasizing the need to fully guarantee his right to defense. Professor Jo, what is the likelihood that the court will grant this request?
Well, you have to wonder, why are they requesting a weekly hearing instead of a twice weekly hearing? And they might be arguing that, well, we need more time to prepare, etc. But they've had equal amount of time as the other side. And if anything, they actually have more manpower on their side. And so I think it's quite unlikely that the court would actually accede to their request. And also, just going back to the actual length of the trial and whether the court is rushing the trial and rushing President Yoon's hearing, you also have to look at, as Professor Lee mentioned, it in the context of previous 2 impeachment trials that we've had with regard to President Noh and President Park, because the issue here in Yoon's case is very simple. We are just dealing with one issue and one issue only, which is whether the martial law declared by Yoon on the night of 3rd of December was an insurrection that basically shows his unwillingness and inability to comply with the Constitution. Whereas Park's case was much more complicated because it involved lots of different corruption allegations, bribery, involvement of private person in state affairs, etc. And so there was a lot more factual issues to be sorted out and sifted through. And so this is much more akin to Noh's impeachment in terms of the complexity of the issues at hand.
Mm-hmm. Now, the 8th hearing, as we know, is scheduled for the 13th, and it's currently the last designated hearing. But the Constitutional Court has yet to decide on President Yoon's request to summon Lee Kyung-min, Chief of Staff of the Defense Counterintelligence Command, and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo as witnesses. Professor Lee, do you think additional hearings or additional witnesses would be granted?
Well, in this case, just looking at the overall context of President Yoon's request, so you have to remember here that President Yoon's side has asked for, basically 31 or more witnesses to be presented at the Constitutional Court hearing, and the court accepted only 8 of them. And in this case, the request to have, in this case, the Prime Minister testify, as well as one additional person, I think really goes to Lee Kyung-min here. Is the court didn't make a final decision, and really, the court has to sort of, again, as I mentioned before, balance between, again, whether or not to move forward with an expedited or at least efficient trial process, or how complete and how much do you want to give President Yoon the opportunity to present his case, but at the same time understanding that not all of his witnesses that he's requested will have the opportunity to actually hear and to be part of the trial. And so whether or not the Constitutional Court accepts these two additional witnesses, that means that there are going to have to be additional hearings, because at the current rate, in terms of what the court has decided, the final hearing is supposed to be on the 13th of February next week. And so if the court decides to accept these two additional witnesses, you have to expect that the court will then have to have additional time to hear those witnesses, and then to wrap up essentially the hearings, and then decide at some point to make a final decision. And so it's really hard to say at this point as to whether or not the court will make a decision to accept these two witnesses, because the court has reserved judgment on them. But if the court in this case is concerned about the impression that the president has not been given enough opportunity to present his side of the case, then the court will probably accept the two witnesses. But if in fact the two witnesses that are going to be heard here have really no relevance, or their testimony is not going to really add anything to the impeachment trial as to the specific issue of whether or not, again, President was violating the Constitution by then ordering the military to impede the work of the National Assembly, whether or not those two have any relevance will, I think, be the essentially deciding factor as to whether or not they should be called. So I think we'll just have to wait and see as to whether or not the court will then decide as to whether or not this will go forward with these two witnesses.
Right, so we'll see until the court makes a decision on that. But meanwhile, President Yoon's legal team has filed a motion with the Seoul District Court requesting the cancellation of his detention rather than bail. Professor, what's the reasoning behind requesting for a cancellation instead of a bail? The court must, decide within 7 days. Do you think it would be approved?
Well, there's two sides to this. So the court, his lawyers have made two basic arguments. One's procedural, and the other is substantive. So on the procedural side of things, essentially, the claim that's being made by President Yoon's legal team is that while he was in detention, the prosecutors should have then indicted him while in the process of his detention. And so if the detention period has lapsed, then the prosecutors don't have the authority to indict him because the period of detention has gone over. So this is actually just a timing question, and it's a question that lawyers deal with regularly as to when you should count the time for when something should be done. And so in this case, when you consider President Yoon being detained is really the question here. What time was he detained? Because within that period of time when the prosecutors can hold the president, they should have made the indictment. So again, the question here really is the beginning of his detention. When was that? Because on the date of the 5th of January, he was arrested at 10:33 a.m. And so basically, the initial arrest period should count until the midnight of the 24th, according to President Yoon's legal team. And so therefore, since he was indicted after that, then it should be an illegal indictment. But the prosecution says no, the detention period is extended for another couple of days because you don't count a certain time when it comes to the arrest. But I think the more important, that's the procedural side. But on the substantive side of things, he's just saying, basically, his legal team is saying that there's no grounds for holding that there's an insurrection charge, or that should be a validated charge against him under criminal law. And so as a result, because there's no the elements of insurrection have not been met, this indictment is substantively flawed. And so he's really presenting two sides of this argument, on the procedural side and on the substantive side, and that's what the court will have to decide on those bases.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's also touch upon the judges. Previously, the Constitutional Court postponed its ruling on whether acting President Cho Sang-mok's decision to not appoint Ma Eun-hyuk as a constitutional judge was unconstitutional. The ruling is now scheduled for the 10th. And Professor Cho, do you think a final decision would be made this time? And could you also tell us how it would impact the impeachment trial?
So my understanding is that the court has actually accepted the request by acting President Choi Sang-mok to present further his side of the case. And so there is a hearing scheduled for the 10th of February. It's not usual to have a decision on the same day as the hearing, so I'm not entirely sure that a decision will be handed down in that case on the 10th. Now, I think the reason why they decided not to issue the ruling on the 3rd as originally planned, but actually accepted this additional request for presentation of further evidence by Chair's side, is once again to ensure that there is due process, because there was some complaint, I believe, that there was a hearing initially of only an hour and 20 minutes on the 22nd of February, and then the court announced that they would pass down its ruling on the 3rd of February, on the 22nd of January, and then, ruling on the 3rd of February. Now, usually that wouldn't actually raise an eyebrow here in Korea, because most of the trial process actually takes place by paper, i.e. documents, rather than oral hearing. It's very unusual for courts to have this amount of oral hearing. We think that this is kind of normal, and we are accepting this to be the standard because we are seeing this all happening on screen. But in a normal trial, most of 95% of the trial is actually taking place without hearing inside the courtroom. And so that's how the court would have proceeded usually. But this is an extra step that they're going further. And so I doubt that an actual decision would be handed down on the 10th, but they may also, have the hearing in the morning and the decision in the afternoon. It's really up to the court.
Right. And could you also shortly tell us about its impact on the impeachment trial as well?
Oh, yes, certainly. So if they accept that Ma Eun-hyuk's non-appointment of Ma Eun-hyuk by acting President Choi is unconstitutional, then that would mean that Ma is entitled to be appointed, and they might still wait for Choi to proceed with that formal official act of appointment. But at the same time, the National Assembly side has actually requested an interim order simply to appoint Ma as a justice on the court. And if the Constitutional Court accepts the interim order, then Ma would straightforward, from that moment in time, actually have the status of a Constitutional Court justice. The impact on Yoon's impeachment trial is that this might actually extend the time, because Ma joining the bench means that Yoon would, obviously request for the whole hearing to be essentially informed, for Ma's benefit, which would take more time. And so that could be used as a device to, again, delay the court procedure. However, the Constitutional Court might also actually decide not to include Ma in the process and not actually give the interim order, because the trial process has gone on for so long and so much of it has already been done. And so they may not feel that this is appropriate. So a lot of people are arguing that the Constitutional Court really wants to have the full bench, 9 justices deciding on the case. But at the same time, I think there is a big question as to, is it really fair and just to have this one justice joining very late at the process and still participating in the decision. And so my personal thought is that, in Park Geun-hye's impeachment trial, we also had only 8 justices, and they were in full consensus regarding this decision. In this trial as well, I think it's very difficult for there to be a minority decision regarding the actual outcome of the case. So I think it's not strictly necessary that Ma needs to be joining.
Right, so we'll really have to see, because the ball is really on the court side. Now, thank you so much for your insights tonight, Professor Cho and Professor Lee. We'll have to wrap up at this time, but we'll hope to talk to you again soon.
My pleasure to be with you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.
플라스틱 사실 편리하잖아요. 저조차도